Welcome to Game and a Half Podcast, the only podcast that covers everything in gaming. My name is Kai.
My name is Jared.
Don't be laughing. Don't be laughing on me.
I'm not. I'm laughing with you.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not laughing.
Today we're beginning. Ooh. Today we're going to be covering topics in r/true gaming on Reddit, as well as covering topics such as Apex Legends and Google Stadia updates. I said that wrong, but that's fine.
Yeah, no, you said it right.
I feel like it was wrong.
You're not wrong, I promise. And I'm back.
I'm back. I recorded last week, but it was so bad that we couldn't release it.
We've been gone for a week, so we're back. I hope you're happy. I hope you missed us. And I'm back.
26 of you.
I'm back in the driver's seat reading the articles again because your comments said that you didn't like Kai reading.
I also lost my license, so.
Your license to read? Okay, I didn't know where you were going.
I shook my head yes, by the way. I know This is not a visual medium.
Okay, so our first article on r/true gaming comes from username EasyAndy1. And he says...
At least he's honest.
At least... Damn it. And he says, why are so few games set in prehistory? So this is very long, and I'm not wanting to read all of it. But he said in the early 2010s, there was a rise and domination of open-world games which focused on survival, crafting,
domination is such a rapey word.
It is a very rapey word.
Domination.
Rise and domination. Of games that focus on survival, crafting, exploration, and customization, and is still in full swing today, with the gaming community practically demanding that these aspects be featured in pretty much any title. Since its release, there have been possibly thousands of knockoffs and inspirations taken from the blocky aesthetic and simplicity of Minecraft. Those games do well, not because it's easy to do, but because the core gameplay loop is one of the most freeing experiences that we have seen in gaming ever. The freedom to completely shape the world around you with seemingly no overall goals to achieve except to keep living was, to say the least, freeing. Until the end was added. He goes on about more things about how we're not focusing more on our prehistory as humans, and rather focusing on things. The example he uses is dinosaurs, and that we love dinosaurs and we use them too much in video games, supposedly, which I don't know of very many games that have
dinosaurs. The dinosaurs.
But he says, I love dinosaurs as much as the next guy, and they're cool and all, but
Clearly not.
So are we. We're cool too. He wants to see more about our prehistory. And how
It takes a very special kind of person to white privilege his way into dinosaurs. We're important too.
So yeah, and this was posted 18 days ago. So this is interesting because there is a game that just came out this year, developed by Ubisoft, specifically the team behind most of the Assassin's Creed games, called Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey. And the whole premise...
Terrible name. They couldn't agree. It could have been Ancestors. It could have been Odyssey. It could have been Humankind. Any of those would have been better than Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey.
So, the whole premise of this game is exactly what Mr. Andy is really easy, or Easy Andy 1, is talking about, and it focuses on our early development as humans. So, sorry, I'm reading the review. I was glancing through the review, and the first sentence just says, where is it at? Listening to an ape get horny as I rub her hairy back isn't the only thing I'm not keen on the third-person survival game.
Oh, Ubisoft.
So it begins 10 million years in the past, with you controlling the leader of a small clan of hominids, the distant precursors to the humans, being that eventually evolved invented computers, developed games about ancient hominids, and wrote reviews about them. This is all through PC Gamer's review, by the way. They gave it a 58 out of 100, which a lot of people are not giving this game very good reviews.
Pretty similar mid-tier reviews.
Yeah, it's okay. And maybe there's more people like Mr. Andy that says that they want more games set in prehistory. But it seemed like after this, people were like, yeah, we were wrong.
we were wrong.
We really don't want this. Or at least in a lot of people's eyes, this wasn't done very well. So it says an average...
No dinosaurs.
No dinosaurs. I don't think so. I don't think there's any dinosaurs in this game. Well, I don't think there's dinosaurs during that time. But there's And what Andy says is there's other interesting threats. There's giant tigers, and there's bigger animals that also threatened the early human life and existence. But it says an average day in Ancestors is spent exploring the forests, swamps, and savannas of Africa, using your senses to examine your surroundings. But the novelty of detecting something by sound or scent wears off almost immediately due to repetition and awkward controls. When I want to use my senses to investigate something, I need to stop moving completely. Then I need to make sure I'm not too close to any rock, stick, plant, or food item, or I'll get prompted to interact with that instead of using my senses. So there's a lot of moving and stopping, then shoveling around because I stopped too close to something else. It's awkward instead of instinctive, which might have been actually how they actually acted. They walked around like, ooh, a stick. They were very easily distracted. Let's see. There's naturally lots of climbing and jumping around from cliffs to trees, which can be exhilarating when making long leaps to snag vines and branches, but much less fun when you miss. There's no targeting here. It's leaps of faith that you'll connect with the spot what you're aiming for, and most expeditious wind up with me plummeting to the ground at least once and shattering my legs. The finer moments of my hominid are even more difficult, like trying to transition.
It's a real life simulator.
From a vertical trunk to a horizontal branch.
Fantastic. So to answer Easy Andy's thing, it exists, and everyone hated it because no one really wants to experience early life because it was hard. And, I mean, there's a million survival games out there that don't have the dinosaurs that are survival games. So, like...
I mean, he used Minecraft as an example. And then he goes on to using, like...
If a creeper's not a dinosaur, I don't know what a dinosaur is. Just saying.
Imagine if dinosaurs just walk around and exploded when they got near things. And he talks about games like Red Dead Redemption 2, DayZ, Minecraft, all those very large exploration games, but he wants something about us, and we got it.
He got it.
I wonder if I'm very curious if you liked.
We should respond.
We should. I'm gonna ask him like, yo, did you play Ancestor, the Odyssey of the Human? Oh, sorry, Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey. If you played it and your thoughts on it.
How did Ubisoft let this happen? How was no one in the marketing department like, you know what? Maybe this name is too long.
Jim, we've already used Odyssey. We can use it again. Don't worry, they won't notice.
They won't notice.
They won't
Literally,
notice.
Ancestors would have been such a catchy name if they just would have used Ancestors.
But this is Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey.
Clearly, they bailed on this game a little bit because there's literally really no big news about this game.
No, yeah, there was no advertising.
So they must have just dumped it. They probably figured out they're like, oh, this game sucks. So we'll dump it to the public and see.
It actually wasn't full price either. It was $40 release, so it wasn't like a full retail $60 game.
They realized how bad they did, and they were like, ugh, gross. Yeah.
So.
All right,
that is your history game. So you have one. I don't think they're ever really gonna do one again. Maybe.
Here's an example of an early history game with dinosaurs that are machines.
I was gonna say Wolfenstein.
Not Wolfenstein.
Which one?
Wolfenstein doesn't have machine dinosaurs.
Yes, it does.
What you talking about, Willis?
Wolfenstein had the dinosaur that blew fire. We fought it. What are you thinking of?
The what? I'm lost my train of thought. The one with the girl takes place. She's like in the future, but in the past. You know?
Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about.
What do you think? It's a huge game. All the big machine dinosaurs.
Oh, Horizon.
Horizon. Thank you.
Gotcha. When you said future and past.
Wolfenstein.
Okay, hold on, guys. We're gonna look this up. Wolfenstein, robot dinosaur.
Maybe there is a lot of dinosaurs in games we just don't notice.
Maybe right. Well, there's these things. They're kind of like these.
Bruh,
that's definitely a dinosaur.
That is a dog. That is 100% a dog.
This is a dog. That's a dinosaur.
That's a dog. It's the same thing.
This one's little.
It's the same thing.
This is another podcast, another argument.
Smoking drugs over
maybe
here.
Maybe it's two that has a dinosaur in it.
Anyway, I was definitely right. Horizon is a brilliant game with dinosaurs.
And it's a cool concept. It takes place in the future, but so far in the future that humankind has reverted back, but still forward. There's these
It's a great game. Play that one.
Yeah.
And then maybe you'll learn to love dinosaurs.
Play Ancestors.
I love dinosaurs as much as the next guy, but dinosaurs are shit. That's not really how that saying works, by the way.
Right.
Anyway, Easy Andy, we solved your problem. Congratulations.
Play Ancestors and then hate it and then play Horizon.
We'll drop you a response and tell you to listen to our podcast so you can hear us shit on you.
YouTube.com/Game and a Half podcast. Go ahead. Next on our agenda, this topic comes from username Torin.
Torn asshole.
Torin Nuclear. I really didn't want it to be Torin asshole. And he says video games can be art, and most contrary arguments boils down to I don't like it, so it can't be art. I might read this whole thing, but I'm not sure. It's very long. I don't believe all video games can be seen as art. Just like not every book, movie, or comic is a piece of art. But I have a hard time comprehending the mindset of people who shun the very idea of video games being art in general. I remember while reading a article, art critic who was dumbfounded that the MoMA had accepted the expedition of Pac-Man and Tetris along works of art, whose reputation as artists is constantly disputed by traditionalists. The irony of it made me giggle, and I kept wondering what he thought of a giant inflatable Felix the Cat among with things he held so dear as true art. At one point, this is Roger Eberts. I guess he has an infamous rant about video games. He says, no one in or out of the field has ever been able to cite a game worthy of comparison with the great poets, filmmakers, novelists, and poets. He says poets twice. Which is bogus in and out of itself, because if we are able to compare modern and contemporary art to the great poets, filmmakers, and novelists, art would have made a sudden halt at the turn of the 19th century. So never mind the great filmmakers, because I'm pretty sure Casablanca doesn't compare. He says a lot of other stuff, but essentially,
the classic argument that video games aren't art.
Well, he thinks that video games are art, but he doesn't believe all video games are art, because what he's saying, he doesn't understand why people shun the idea of video games being art. But his first sentence says, I don't believe all video games are art, because he also says he doesn't believe that every movie, book, or comic is a piece of art either.
Newsflash, people.
It's all art.
It's all art.
It's all
If it's
art. Something that you've made in your mind and you've shaped it into something real and real, that's art for you.
100% art. It doesn't have to be good art.
Right.
Now that's a distinction. Like, if you take a video of your little cousin, it's just bad art, but it's still art. It's viewed through the lens of looking at it as a piece of art, which is why video games are definitely art. First of all, you'd have to draw each individual character either in a computer or through cell shade, like they did with Cuphead, and then you have to animate all of that. That's all art. That is literally the people working on these games are artists who went to art school to learn how to do this. So.
And it's art that people. It's just another way of experiencing art. Like, you're not standing in a museum and you're not looking at something, or you're not sitting in a very interactable exhibit or piece, but you're sitting down and you're actually playing this art that someone created, this idea that someone came up with in their mind.
There are also like a trillion college classes now that exist that are like video games as art, which is like a whole thing that's taught in art school, is that just like film, just like photography, which wasn't initially viewed as an art, which is hysterical, it's an art. It's all art. Stop trying to make things not art. It's definitely an art.
His argument seems very back and forth. I mean, he just doesn't agree with people saying that the idea of video games are
not all video games are art, but they absolutely are.
So he later on in the article he says, I think the biggest flaw in the games art discussion is that people refuse to see the unique intricacies of the medium, namely that the mechanics are also part of what makes the video game what they are. The possibility of interaction in the medium shouldn't be seen as a determinant of an artistic expression, but as a way to subvert expectations and encourage it. Exactly.
Art's purpose is to generate emotion in the participant. Expression. So, like, if you look at a beautiful painting and you're moved by it, it did its job.
Right.
If you play a video game and you're moved by it, or you enjoy it, or you're happy, or you're sad, or you have an emotion, it did its job as art.
Or any of that. Like, if you come out with something and people are really angry at it, you still invoked some kind of emotion in them. They had some preconceived idea of what they wanted, and it didn't live up to that expectation. But that's still an emotion that is being conveyed. Yeah, exactly.
These are the people who say video games are not art are the same people who go to modern museums and look at modern art and go, "That's not art."
Nothing's art.
That's definitely still art. Just because you want something to not be art does not make... You're talking to two people who have taken... One is an art major. Yes. One was an art minor. It's definitely art.
We're very enveloped in the
We're two people who can actually, for once in this podcast, we can actually talk on a topic.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing, and you see this throughout history. of artistic mediums, and he talks about comics as well, and people looking down on these things because it's the beginning of them, or just because they're doing something different from the norm. They're deviating from what people saw the idea of what art was. And you're seeing that in video games. People don't see that as being your painting or your drawing, and they don't know that all that stuff is done just behind closed doors. Like, it's more digital now than it had been before, but people are still drawing character designs. People are still doing storyboarding.
Yeah.
People are still, doing environments and stuff like that. You just don't get to see all that done. It's just like a video. I don't know.
And I mean, it's crazy to me that people have this like mindset that I can understand if your understanding of what art is only a historical understanding of painting. Like, I think a lot of people get caught up in that. They're like, Michelangelo was an artist who painted beautiful things, and that's art. But like, video games can't be art because in the historical sense, it's not like a painting. But like, that's crazy logic. Like,
right. And it's just like it's preference and what you're seeing as art. I mean, people will view one thing like the Mona Lisa or anything and be like, "Oh, that's art." Like, I can understand.
That's not even good art.
Right, exactly. That's a whole other topic. Like, that's not even good art.
That's not even good art.
People just like it because it's
mildly
popular.
okay art.
Yeah, it's funny taking all these art classes, but I didn't even know the only reason that the Mona Lisa was popular is because it was stolen.
Yeah.
It's not because it was like this amazing piece of art. It just got stolen, and that's why everybody knows about it.
Yep.
But
and then, like, I mean, you can go back historically and look at pretty much any medium, but like with photography, the only reason, like, photography when it came out, people didn't think was art because you were just taking a picture of reality. Like,
right.
that doesn't count.
Exactly. Well, people did all of this skill and they had all this practice of like perfectly replicating reality with paints and brushes, and then someone comes along and is like, hey, and like takes a picture and does that same thing in half the time. They're like, that can't be art. Like, you didn't work as hard at it, or it didn't take you as long, so clearly it can't be art.
Anything you do that is then seen as artistic is art. Anything.
That's the problem. People will look at it and be like, that's not artistic.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what. If your intent is artistic,
Yeah.
and even then, there are people who do stuff and they're like, I just did it because it was fun. And people are like, it's art.
Right.
If you take your laundry hamper and you dump it onto the floor of the, like, MoMA in New York, and you're like, this is art, it's still art.
Right.
It's the exact same thing that freaking all the artists of the 20th century were trying to show us, and we still have an issue with this.
Well, something that I really love, too, that I've been leaning more towards is installation pieces. Like, I really like fluorescent lighting. And Miracle Mile at LACMA is just a set of, like, 32 various colored lights on a wall. But that's art. Like, art. That's something
Still
that's...
art.
Yeah, it's still art. Even that someone might be... It's just lights on a wall, but it's art. Like, the artist had an intention they were going for. They had a thought process. You can see the light from outside of the museum. They had a decision of what they wanted to be invoked, or what they thought they could invoke in people with this piece. That's art.
And just like a video game developer, sitting down and working on a character ceaselessly for, like, their entire life and not getting paid that well to do it, you know, it's art. It's definitely art.
I think it's just like video games have always, and they're less seen in this light now than before, but they were always seen as a novelty. Like, if you like got a kid's toy and said this is art, someone would be like, that's a kid's toy. Like, that's not art. Someone just made some crappy kid's toy. But someone created that idea. Someone made this design. This was in someone's head before it became into reality, and that's art. And again, video games are being seen less and less as a novelty and being praised for emotional impact and impact in society. And
I mean, I can see definitely in the future, like, video games becoming what cinema is now. Like,
it almost kind of is with
yeah,
all
I mean,
the narratives in gaming.
Absolutely. And, like, as we get further and further down that road, it's going to be more about how the viewer interacts with the medium and how that, you know, narratively changes the story. Because that's, you know, that's the thing that film could never do is... Film is very beautiful and it can tell a story, but you can't interact with the characters.
Right.
So being able to interact with the story and change the story based on your own decisions makes you that much more connected to the story. So
it was interesting because I was listening to or watching this video, and it was talking about video game voice actors, and it's interesting because you brought up film, talking about like animated voice actors and video game voice actors, and a lot of them were talking about how they were like looked down upon because they did voices for video games. And it's like, that's not very far off from doing like animated stuff, but that's film.
Peasant!
Right.
How dare you?
But that's film, and it was looked like film is up here, like clearly, but you're doing voices for video games, you're clearly like down here. You're not as good as someone that's doing animated voice acting, but it's the same thing.
It was the same thing with cartoons. People were like, oh, that's not, it's like, that's not traditional, that's not film, that's different. And then we were like, wow, these are actually really good, and that became art.
And now that's like more popular than anything
else.
So
let's make a pact right here, right now. Anyone who listens to this, everything is
all
art.
All 26 of you.
All 26 of you. Everything is art if you want it to be art. Because the intention of art is what makes something art.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the original person was like, this is art. It doesn't matter. As long as someone is like, this is artistic. I can see this in an artistic way. And this is what I'm trying to say through it. That's art. It's all art. Anyway.
Yeah. And
after the break... Sorry, you can keep going.
No, I was gonna just talk about like abstract and people thinking like, oh, that's also not art because it's like we just drew like lines on a page, or that's just a bunch of squares and triangles on a piece of paper. How is that art?
This episode should just be two artists rant about why people are dumb.
That'll be the title of this podcast.
Two people just rant about why normal people don't think
and for all
art.
of you people that are like upcoming artists, like anything you do is art. Don't look at your stuff and be like, oh, this isn't art. Like your ideas and the things that you come up with in your head are ideas, and you've made them into reality. Like that is art.
And also now that doesn't make it good art.
No,
that just makes it art.
Because I mean, we all have bad art.
We all have bad art. Anyone who's ever taken a selfie is bad art. They're bad artists. All right.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Mr. Trojan Nuclear or Trojan.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Rip my asshole, whatever you said earlier. Yeah, everything is art. So.
When we come back, we'll be talking about Breath of the Wild.
You were so close. You should have went with your gut. Yeah, it says Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild.
And how it's an overrated game, not in my opinion, but in other people's
mine
opinion.
And other people's opinion.
And we're back.
And we're back.
So in this version of in this section of the podcast, we're going to be going on talking about Breath of the Wild, dipping into some Stadia, and then talking about dipping our toes
in each other's mouths.
That's after the podcast. So this article comes from Bastillion Fig user. And he said,
name,
Breath of the Wild, play for an hour.
Or she.
Sorry, didn't mean to assume. Breath of the Wild, play for an hour, do nothing. I can't help but feel... Sorry, I had to add...
Why do you read this one so dramatically?
Play for an hour, do nothing. I can't help but feel that playing Breath of the Wild is a waste of my time. Everything in the game is designed to be slow and a chore. The climbing is slow and tedious, requires very little skill. Okay, let's read it normally.
The dramatic reading by Jared.
I was playing recently, and it was about an hour and a half in when I realized I had basically done nothing the whole time. All I did was climb some hills that were identical to the last hills I climbed, perhaps do a couple of same repeat puzzles, which are in quotes, if you can call picking up a rock a puzzle. And I feel like I had not been satisfied by the session. I find it bizarre that a game like Ghost Recon Wildlands gets slated for having a huge and boring open world. Everyone is sick of the Ubisoft formula, but here comes Nintendo game with towers to climb, massive open world collectibles, and suddenly these aren't a problem? Not to mention the world is extremely boring. There are a handful of unique towns/villages, and the same stables repeat over and over with massive empty space in between that is a complete chore to traverse. I just don't get it. I just feel like the game's almost exclusively padding with very little meaningful content in between. It highlights a problem I have with a lot of open world games. So yeah, moving on to the next topic.
You can't see Jared wiping the tears out of his eyes as he strokes his copy of Breath of the Wild slowly and tenderly, whispering to it that it'll all be okay.
No, and I have an opinion about this that I agree with Mr. Bastillion Fig's point, but I want to let Kai take the floor and give me his opinion because he agrees with a lot of these.
You disagree?
No, I do disagree, but it's for a different reason. Like it's because one of the things he says in here too is, where is it? Oh, I just feel like the game is almost exclusively padding with very little meaningful content in between. And meaningful content is going to vary between the person, because if you're someone like me that's played every Zelda game, except for Skyward Sword, played every Zelda game.
I was going to call you out on that bullshit real quick, by the way.
Then going through the world, you're going to recognize different locales and names of locales and aesthetically similar things to other Zelda games. And that I have a meaningful attachment to all these Zelda games, so seeing these locales will invoke a meaningful sense when I'm going through these pretty bare open areas. Someone that doesn't have any kind of meaningful connection to these games or hasn't played them or isn't obsessed with the lore as much as I will, they're gonna go past Lake Hylia and be like, this is an open body of water, like I don't care. But it's like, oh man, this is Lake Hylia, and you reference all the other Lake Hylias, and how does this fit into the timeline?
Nerd.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. That's why it means so much to me when I'm seeing these things. So no, I totally understand. Like if you're not as devoted and into Zelda's lore, then this is going to be a big open world with nothing in it aside from a couple like points of interest. But I mean, you've played some of the Zelda games with me, and a lot of them too.
As someone who's played lots of Zelda games, I won't claim all of them, but as someone who has actually played Skyward Sword, which is better than Jared, I agree with this, and I think from the perspective of the other Zelda games is where it really makes sense, because Breath of the Wild is the first open world Zelda game. The developers of the game didn't really know how to do open world.
Right.
Like they sort of had an idea, but like not really. And then like most open world games, there's just nothing to do except repetitive fighting the same enemies. Because I think in the entire...
It's like 10 enemies.
There's like literally 10 enemies.
There's not very many.
Right. And there's not only is there only 10 enemies, but there's not that many versions of each enemy.
Like 3 or 4.
They're color variety.
Right.
They're not even like physical changing.
No. I think different colors equate to different essential health bars, like different levels of skill and difficulty. But yeah.
I mean, but it's definitely right. Like, you can play Breath of the Wild and for an entire hour do absolutely nothing interesting.
Right. Well, and I mean, I had this issue, and I agree. I mean, again, there's a difference because there's an attachment to Zelda, but that's one of my problems with open world games. Like, I remember playing, I always reference back to Fallout 3, and I played like 30 hours in the Fallout 3. I don't think I did anything. Like I remember going to the first town, like with the nuke, and you can either explode the nuke or the bomb or like keep the town alive. And then after that, it's just a blank. Like I think I just wandered around and looked for things, and I didn't. And that's my problem. Like, you give me a big open space to do things, and I just wander around and do nothing.
Well, and really after, like, I mean, obviously they came out with DLC for Zelda, but really after defeating Ganon, the game's pointless. Like, unless you're gonna be a completionist.
Right, exactly.
Like,
and even then, like, the completion is the completing the game doesn't give you very much.
No.
The only thing that like you should do to complete is if you get all the memories and you unlock like a new memory, like the true ending. But like unlocking all the Korok seeds, which is essentially just Korok shit, you get nothing. You get a bigger Korok shit, which there's 999 of them. So it's
good luck.
It's a task to find, and it is literally they're lifting up rocks and they're like moving things out of the way, and then that's how you find some of the Koroks, because the developer wanted you to be able to have this kind of sense of satisfaction, like always like finding. It's kind of like with Mario Odyssey, like they put a lot of moons in there, so it can be like you're always finding a moon and you have this sense of satisfaction. But if you're just lifting off a rock and finding a Korok, I don't know.
Well, also the problem with Zelda is that everything dies and breaks. Everything.
Oh yeah.
So like
your problem with like the item
and the item stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, fine, I've now completed the game and I want to get like the best items, or maybe I haven't completed the game and I want to get the best items. Everything breaks, except for the Master Sword.
Well, and then like armors and stuff like that. But yeah, all weapons.
But all weapons. So like, even if you're like, oh, I found this super rare magical bow of heroism, and it still breaks because everything in the game breaks.
And that's a trope in a lot of kind of like big RPG.
Yes, but they also put a thing to fix them in pretty much all RPG games, is an ability to go to like a smith and trade in items to be able to repair the items. Yeah. It is exclusive, nearly exclusive in Zelda to be like. I think
Breath of the Wild's fix to that was just making even the items that are pretty rare to find. You can find a lot of them. Like you go through items a lot. They break easily, but you go through items a lot and you find those items a lot too. So again, that's their
I would say
solution.
My issue with Breath of the Wild after the first play is detail. because he's right. Like, the horse stables are all the same.
Right.
They literally all look identical.
Right.
It would have taken an extra, like, month to make different horse stables.
This game was delayed so many times.
I know. I understand it was delayed so many times, but, like, that's the, like, when you're walking around, it's all that detail that's gonna make it that much more special. It's what made games like Dark Souls amazing, is all the detail in them.
Would you have wanted, like, the inside or, like, some of the outside be different but still have, like, the horse head? Because I think in their sense it was like, oh, you can recognize it. Like, if you're looking over Horizon, you see that horse head, you're like, oh, there's a stable up there. Like, that's cool. I should need to get to the stable and I can get my horse out or something.
Pretty sure it doesn't matter how you draw a stable, I'll still be able to be like, there's some horses over there. I don't. Also, yeah, like, I don't need the iconography of a horse head. Like, I'm not. I mean, maybe some people need it. I don't need it. So like, you could literally just put a building and some horses next to it, but make it different. And I also want, like, smaller towns.
Right.
Like, that's the other thing, because, like, in Breath of the Wild, it's like there's all city and no town.
Right.
And I feel like definitely how they built the world, there should definitely be some smaller, like, a couple houses. Like, I think Pokemon does this really well. God forbid I compliment Pokemon, but I think Pokemon does this really well. Where it's like, you'll be walking in between routes.
There's like little
so
homes.
Like one town to one town, and you'll stumble along like one or two homes, and there'll usually be an interaction in one of those two homes. And like, where the side quests at, Zelda? Where the side quests at?
There's a lot of side quests in Breath of the Wild.
There's not enough.
They're
not good enough.
You're right. There's more like, go to this thing and find this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and what were we, like, playing Borderlands, like Borderlands 3, like, we had that side quest where we found and fought that boss, which you wouldn't have fought unless you did the side quest. Like, side quests that have meaningful content in them, I think, is more like, because a lot of side quests in that game, but not necessarily. And I mean, there's always the trope of like the side quests aren't as exciting as the main quest. Like, there's just these side objectives that you can do if you're interested.
Well, that's because they don't put effort into them.
Right.
If you put effort into making your side quest good, which Borderlands clearly does, because they're literally, that's the other thing I really respect about Borderlands, is they're all, like, sometimes you'll do side quests and it'll just be an NPC character be like, go do this, and then you have like a letter, like like you can think of like Elder Scrolls, those games where it's like, go do this, and then all of a sudden you just have like a letter you read, and that's your side quest. But in Borderlands, they literally animated every side quest, so there's a whole animation that goes with it. There's boss battles, there's a whole other storyline for every side quest. That is detail. That's the detail that the players want. That's the detail that's going to keep you interesting after you finish the main story.
And some of those side quests do have that kind of detail, but again, if you're not familiar with the Zelda lore, it's just going to be like, oh, you showed me to this section that, like, Zelda practice.
Breath of the Wild relies heavily on people who have an emotional connection. 100%. Because it's all the, like, memory bullshit that's throughout the entire game where you're just like...
Well, and that's another thing that I think... there's another article that I had read that was saying that Breath of the Wild is a terrible game. Most overrated game of all time, and one of the... things he talks about is the story, and I agree with this because they showed off a lot of the story in the trailers, and it looked like this amazing narrative that was going to come up. But most of the story is just memories that Link is going through, and they're very fragmented. It's a very fragmented narrative, which, I mean, they did the whole cliche of like, oh, the hero wakes up and he has no memory. You got to replace his memory and stuff like that. But no, I was really hoping to have that more narrative story, emotional, invoking Zelda story this time around, which it didn't. I mean, again, it struck me because it's meaningful. Like, no lie, I watched the first trailer, I literally almost cried. Like, there was like tears in my eyes. I was like, this is the best game in the world. I've beat Breath of the Wild like 4 times. I'm playing through it again right now.
And I agree that the climbing and like the stamina stuff is just terrible. Mm-hmm. Why would you do that to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely better late game because you have a larger stamina bar.
But it's so boring to get stamina. You just keep having to do, as he said, repetitive. I mean, they're not that repetitive, but you keep having to do dungeons and find them, and the map is huge. So you're like, I gotta get 4 more, and then I can get more stamina, so I can climb to the thing. And that's the thing is, it's like at no point there's not enough Easter eggs in the game where climbing is like really like, oh, I have to get like 4 bars of climbing to be able to make it to this really awesome thing I'm going to be able to keep, because you can't keep anything in the game.
And I think that, like, I think the you touched on the repetitivity comes comes into play a lot because in the first like section, essentially the Great Plateau, when you're doing the tutorial, essentially, like a lot of like wonder comes into that because you do have a small stamina bar and you're climbing up a mountain and then you fall and you're like, man, like I really don't want to know what's up there. But then like 20 hours into the game, you're just like, I just want to go up there. I just want to progress. And then you fall and you're just like, screw it. And then it rains every 20 minutes. So
they
it's like
make you choose between stamina and hearts too. So you always have this like,
and
I have 6 bars of stamina, but I have half a heart. So
and you have to have a certain amount of hearts to even use the Master Sword. So then if you went through the whole game, my first playthrough, and only did stamina, I had this huge stamina, but I went to go get the Master Sword, and you try to pull it out of the...
And it kills you.
And it kills you because you don't have enough hearts. So you're just like, I have to go back and do more shrines so I can get more hearts because I decided I wanted only stamina.
Also, all the shrines look the same.
Right.
Like, they're all different puzzles, but would it have killed you to design at least like 4? Even in the original Zeldas, the top-down Zeldas, they at least changed the color palette.
Right.
These are all in blue. They're all the same.
Right.
No detail.
And I think that's like, I mean, going back to the more traditional Zelda formula, I mean, they were able to have more of a linear experience and keep the player on this path where it's like, here's the story, here's what you're doing, you're constantly being engaged, you're not going to be like, ooh, what's this, and then go somewhere else. I mean, you might, but those extra little paths aren't going to make you go to this big area where there's nothing and then you're climbing up mountains with your little
However,
stamina.
there are games that do this really well, GTA being one of them, where it's like the world is so vibrant and so detailed.
Well, it feels real. Like, it feels lived in. It feels like this is a world that could exist.
Or does exist. Like,
right.
I mean, in its own sense.
In
like,
a sense, it kind of does.
Electronically,
yeah.
But even then, like, you feel... Or like Skyrim is another game where it kind of feels that way.
Right.
And there's definitely like, large, empty spaces, but...
Right, like for me, I feel like I can do the same argument for Skyrim. I know a lot of people that are really into Elder Scrolls lore, and like Skyrim is huge. I don't know exactly, but I feel like Skyrim is definitely larger than Breath of the Wild. And traveling through that would be like pointless for me. But some people might be like, oh, but what about this like rock that was in this other game, and what about this stone that comes up? And it's just like, yeah.
Think of all the references you missed because you've never played Skyward Sword. I mean, think of the hundreds of references.
I still know about Skyward Sword lore, I still haven't played it.
No, you don't know all of it because you've never played it.
He
claims to be
the Hyrule Historia.
He has seen the Zelda Symphony. That's how much of it, and he's never played Skyward Sword. He bought a very expensive copy of Super Mario Sunshine or whatever the Nintendo GameCube version of it.
Yeah, it's Sunshine.
And then has never played Skyward Sword. Refuses.
That's not true. I don't refuse.
You bought a copy of a game you already bought.
Yeah, because it's a great game.
You don't know if Skyward Sword isn't a great game, other than everyone always craps on it 24/7.
You know the game that first introduced stamina was? Skyward Sword. And they didn't do a good job at doing it.
That's hilarious. They knew what they were getting into then, because if that was the same...
Skyward Sword, it was the same. Skyward Sword introduced the stamina bar. And it was arguably worse than this game.
Mistake.
So, in this Breath of the Wild themed discussion, Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out sometime in the next couple years. What would be your hope for Breath of the Wild 2?
Detail.
Because technically it does take place in the same world. So we don't know if we're going to explore the same map. A lot of the stuff they showed was underground. If they're going to go more towards traditional underground dungeons and have like real Zelda dungeons this time instead of just like the little shrines that you can do. But we don't know. I mean, what would be your want? So what sense of detail?
Literally, just polish everything out. Make not everything so similar. Like I don't care if you do a real dungeon or not, but make things look different. Even if it's a different puzzle, give it a different texture package. I know it takes time. I'm sorry that you have to take time out of your day and create a new like version of it.
They have all the assets from the first game. They're just using those, so it shouldn't take as long to do.
Right. So I hope that they figure it out. I hope that they don't spend all their time trying to create a new world and they spend all their time using the world they built to make it that much better.
From the little we've seen from the game, which is just one trailer, we're seeing very much the Ocarina of Time to Majora's Mask jump. Like, that was probably 2.5 years in between both of those games. And Majora's Mask has all the assets from Ocarina of Time. They just used the same assets, but completely made the game different. This Breath of the Wild
And
seems like
made
it's
it
more
about
darker.
14 times harder
Oh yeah.
by adding a time element.
I remember as a kid, like, not understanding what I was doing wrong because I got to the third day and I just died. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? But you have to do the Song of Time, you have to go back in time, you have to do everything over again, and yeah, maybe they added a time element.
God, I hope not. I hope they learned anything that didn't work.
So, Bastilian Fig, there wasn't really an answer
You know what
to
I
that
want?
question.
Freaking Ocarina. That's what I want.
Like, just the instrument to play, or a remake of that game?
No,
Another
I want
remake
like
of that game.
the instrument, the magic. Because like,
There's not really a lot of, like,
what are you talking about, Willis?
I was not a lot of magic in this game, in Breath of the Wild.
I know. That's
That's
the
what I was saying.
problem.
Yeah, that's what I was
Give me
agreeing
more
with. I was
magic.
agreeing with
Well,
you.
I mean, other than all the superpowers that you have.
Right.
But like,
Do you want more instrument-based magic like every Zelda game before?
weird how I want that. Interesting. I also want more rubies. Rupees. Peace. I want more.
You get a lot not post game, but like mid game. You get like thousands of rupees. You can buy a house. You can buy a house in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, but it's not
house.
good.
It's not
I want to
good.
be able to build my house anywhere.
That'd be so cool.
I mean, I know that I'm like a farm sim slut, and that like
He's 100% a farm
that
slim.
that
Farm
gets
slim?
my little
Greases your chicken?
my willy wet.
Greases your chicken.
But like, if I could, Breath of the Wild is so huge that if I could start my own town, like Fallout is a great example. Other than you can't choose where you do that in Fallout, but like you can build a town. It's not intuitive and it doesn't work, but it was a great idea. But if they did that in Breath of the Wild, that'd be brilliant. Like,
Crazy.
let me be the mayor of Linkville, please. Give me something to do that's not just climbing and walking to things that I've already seen. Because after you've played that game for about, I don't know, 10 hours, you've done everything. There is nothing after 10 hours that you will see.
You know what you can do? Do all that stuff over again like I have. I played it 4 times through.
No.
The
No one
difference
wants to
is
do
I
that.
played it once on Wii U because I didn't have a Switch and I was too impatient to wait for the Switch. And I sold it. I got a Switch. I played the Switch version. I beat the Switch version. Then I got the Master mode, and I'm playing through it right now. So I'm on my 3rd playthrough actually, and I'm playing through it on the hard mode. It's great.
Ooh.
I love it. Everybody go
Be
play.
better.
Go
Be better.
Go play Breath of the Wild.
I will say that it makes sense when it came out. Everyone was like, this is amazing, because it was like Zelda, and we all waited, and we're all bad at waiting, and we want instant gratification. So we were like, they did it, it's beautiful, game of the year. And then we lived,
Game of the Year.
then we lived with it, and we were like, aw, man, we just gave that away. I don't know what they were competing against.
Yeah, I don't remember in 2017 what the other games were, but yeah, Zelda got Game of the Year.
I just don't think Breath of the Wild is going to have the same life as Ocarina or Majora's Mask. Like, it won't live as long.
You don't think so?
No. It's not.
You don't think in like 20 years we're gonna get a Breath of the Wild remake in like the newer style?
No,
No,
1,000% no.
Do you think that's more or less on like the like technical prowess that like how would they do that, or just like
No,
it's not worth
it would be easy. They just have to remask everything. They just have to like make it whatever
8K
the
Breath of the
yeah, it's
Wild.
like whatever the version of HD is. I mean, I don't even know if Breath of the Wild is HD because the Switch only runs 720p, and so did the Wii U. So I don't think that Zelda is 1080p. I did it!
It usually says 180p. And I either have to delete or correct him every time.
Oh man,
You're 1080p.
I hope you put in like celebratory like applause in the background.
You're just making more work for me with all this shit.
Yeah, I don't care. Anyway, yeah, I have high hopes for Breath of the Wild too, but if they don't change anything, I'm gonna be that bitter guy on Reddit being like, this is overrated.
I'm gonna love it.
And Jared's just gonna be sitting there just stroking his Breath of the Wild 2 package.
Yep. I'll be making my Breath of the Wild and Breath of the Wild 2 package McLove, and then the Breath of the Wild 3 baby will come out, and that'll be happy. Okay, the Google's Stadia's. Stadia's Google. So, this comes from The Verge. Now, we're not a news podcast, but I thought this was an interesting take. So, if you don't know, Google Stadia is Google's toe dip into the gaming industry, and more along the lines of a streaming. That's the word I was looking for. Streaming service.
Google saw video games and said, hold my beer.
And so they're going full streaming. So with the Google Stadia, you can play the games that are compatible with the Stadia on any device that can run Google Chrome, whether that be your phone, your laptop, your Mac, your TV with a Chromecast, whatever. And they have their proprietary controller. So when they first announced all of this, they said you'd be able to seamlessly go from your TV to any devices without any worries, because the controller would be synced to Stadia's servers over its Wi-Fi. Later, now we just got more news on it, because Google Stadia comes out November 19th. I think for the people that have the Founders Pack. I think if you didn't pre-order the Founders Pack, it comes sometime 2020.
Yeah.
But they said, "Oops, just kidding, guys. We did. You can't do that. It's only wireless if you have a Chromecast, which
Chromecast Pro or whatever it is.
Oh yeah,
fancy.
the Chromecast Ultra.
Yeah.
Which, mind you, the Founders Pack does come with a Chromecast Ultra. But if you didn't pre-order the Founders Pack, then you're fucked, because you have to have a plug-in USB-C cable, and that USB-C cable has to be compatible with the device you're using Google Stadia's streaming service on. So there's a possibility that your device may not be compatible with USB-C, i.e. iPhones, and you wouldn't be able to use any of their streaming services on your phone because your phone can't support USB-C, which means you can't use your controller, and Google Stadia's streaming service won't have Bluetooth at launch, so you're fucked. That's the moral of the story.
Let me give you a dramatic representation through a narrative story about how this happened and how we've gotten to this point. Okay, imagine now we're in a boardroom, and at one end is Google, represented in a person, and at the other end of the room is the public. And Google's like, "We have video games," and the public is like, "You don't do video games. What you talking about?" And Google panics, and they're like, "Man, and then they just start lying. And they're like, "You'll be able to take a controller, you can play on anything, all of our games are gonna be lit, it's gonna be great." And the public's like, "Oh, okay, we see you, Google, you've done some good things before." And Google's like, "Yeah." And then they turn to the window, and there's just a group of Google engineers crying. That's what happened. And now we're seeing the result of that, which is you can't just say things that aren't gonna happen.
Yeah, it's... So the Founders Pack, by the way, is $130, and with that you get the controller and the Chromecast Ultra.
You get a wired controller and something no one wanted before.
And that, if you pre-order that will be available in November, like I said, but any others will be...
Congratulations on spending $130.
But for them, for people that have the Chromecast, it's wireless. So...
Yeah, but it's only wireless on your TV.
But think about, like, I always have to forget that not, like, everybody that plays games is so, like, in-depth into news and, like, the community.
Look it to me in the face. Look it to me in the face.
Look it to you?
Look it to me. If you pre-ordered this bullshit...
No, I didn't.
You're into games.
No. Okay, well, yes. Okay, yes.
No one who's like, "I don't really play games. This sounds like a good idea," is pre-ordering the $130 Founders Pack of Stadia. These are all dudes and women just like us. Just like us, who are sitting there like, "What the fuck? What do you mean I have to plug a cord into my phone?"
Right.
They knew all this.
No, you're right. I got you. But yeah, it's
bad.
It's a bad move, Google. Like,
this is your like first. You're right. This is your toe dip into video games, and then you just took a dump in the pool.
I mean, again, and it's just like the lying thing. Like, if they came out right away and they're like, "You actually can't seamlessly go between. You have a cord. If it's not the Chromecast," people might have been like, "I don't want to."
People might have been like, "I'm not gonna order this. That's stupid."
You're right. People like, you can't make that sacrifice. We can't take that risk.
We're gonna take the money first and then tell them that they're screwed.
Yeah. So I mean, and that just plays into a lot of people that I've seen on like Twitter and Reddit. It's like, well, is this going to translate to how well the Stadia is running these games? I mean, you played was it the beta version of Stadia on your Mac? You played Odyssey, right? Or Origins, which I don't remember which one it was. I think
it was Odyssey.
Odyssey. You said it was pretty fine. I mean, it was
yeah. I
mean, for running on a Mac, clearly.
It was definitely scaled down.
Oh, okay.
Firstly, so it wasn't PS3 is what I think that game came out on. It was
Odyssey. That came out
PS4.
That was the most recent.
Oh no, it was
Origins, which was the one before it.
Origins, which came out for PS4 still.
Yes,
it was definitely scaled down slightly, and it ran fine. But I didn't have a controller. I was playing with a wired keyboard, so or hardwired because it was in a laptop.
Right.
So and a trackpad. So I really didn't play that much of it because any of you who've ever tried to play anything with a trackpad,
it's impossible.
Feel my pain. But yeah. it doesn't matter if it runs on. That's the other thing is it's like, yeah, it's impressive to run on a computer, but if you can't, like if I couldn't just take my Stadia controller and be like, boom, now I want to play on my computer. Oh no, I have to plug it in with a USB-C. What is this, 2004? Right. Plugging things in.
I mean, I'm happy it's USB-C. I want everything to be USB-C.
Wow, that's sad when you're like, oh, at least it's USB-C. I would have laughed so hard if they were like, it's micro USB. Like, why would you do this?
Just can't use it on my. I have to have like a separate dongle for my dongle for the micro USB. Yeah, Google.
Google, what are you doing?
I know. I just love The Verge's title for this article. Google Stadia wireless controller won't be very wireless at launch. And again, this is at launch, but still, for the people that wanted to be able to like play on their Chromecast, which came with their Stadia, and then go on their phone, they can't do that.
What this always comes back to, companies, is no one cares how long it takes you to make something as long as it's good. Stop trying to be like, yeah, it's not perfect, but we're going to sell it anyway.
Well, they're trying to get it out, well, at least for this Founders Pack, in this holiday era, so people can be like, oh, like
because Apple stepped in and they're like, we got games. Apple kicked down the boardroom door during this meeting, looked people in the face and was like, we've done things wrong before. We admit it. You know, we've done some terrible things, but we got games. And then just walked out of the room.
And I will admit, like, Apple Arcade, 100 games for $4.99 a month, and then you can have like family plans for it. That's
when does
genius.
Apple Arcade come out?
It's out. You can get on your phone. You can get on your computer.
That's not good.
It wasn't out for Mac at launch, but it's out for Mac now. So you can get on Mac, Apple TV, iPhone, hundreds of games.
I'm being honest. I don't.
It's $5 a month.
I couldn't care less.
It has Farm Simulator.
I spend more. This is
Farming Simulator.
This is a. It doesn't matter.
On
This is a really sad truth though. I spend more than $5 in a single latte in my daily drive. And I still wouldn't pay that for the one mildly okay and 99 terrible games that Apple's offering.
Yeah, but they didn't lie about it.
They didn't lie. I mean, they did, because they were like, 100 games! And I was like, well, not really. 4 games you might actually want to play,
and
96 games. You're right. They didn't lie. 100 games you could play if you were so inclined.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, if you pre-ordered the Founders Pack, I'd be curious to see how this pans out come November.
Good luck to you.
Good luck to you. Hats off.
Have fun plugging things in repetitively.
Speaking of things that you don't have to plug in repetitively, Apex Legends got a big Season 3 update.
I don't understand any of what you just said.
So, It was just a poor transition.
That was a terrible segue. Awful.
Yeah, Apex got a big Season 3 update.
For Halloween. Well, I mean, not Season 3 for Halloween, but there's a Halloween game mode, which is what I wanted to talk about, but Jared insisted on talking about the rest of the
Because there's significantly larger stuff that came with it. A new character and an entirely new map.
I got what I wanted, which was Spoopy Apex.
So yeah, there's a new map. It's really cool. There's a new champion out, a new legend.
He's Asian,
Crypto.
so...
He's Asian. He has cool tech stuff.
He's Asian and a hacker, which I don't know if is a stereotype, but it feels a little close.
It does feel like a stereotype.
Why couldn't the hacker be a brown dude?
Because brown people can't hack.
Racism. Or a woman. Why couldn't, women are underrepresented in, it could have been an Asian woman. That would have been way more cool. Come on.
What's her name's like the front runner for the whole Hong Kong protest, Mei in Overwatch?
Oh yeah.
So she's like, her character is like the front runner for the
Apex. You could have been the front runner to a protest that is getting Blizzard shut down.
That's another discussion. Everyone has talked about that. I didn't feel a need to talk about that other than like, yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, we really didn't. We were like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. It's an important thing. And then we were like, well, Blizzard's just dumb. So like, what else are we gonna say? Like,
that's the extent of it. Blizzard's dumb.
Yeah,
and
Blizzard.
Not doing so hot.
Not doing so great right now, which is their own fault. Anyway,
Apex.
Back to Apex Legends.
Yeah, so for Halloween, I think October 17th is when this game mode came out, and I think it runs through the month of October. They added a spoopy game mode, which is called, I don't remember, Shadowfall?
Shadowfall.
Is it Shadowfall?
Yes, it is called Shadowfall, and it is extremely fun. And you play in groups.
It's called Shadowfall. High five to me.
we can really hype. Oh, that was terrible. Hold on. There we go. You can play in a group of 32 people, and you all drop down, and then as you kill each other, you become shadows. Very creative, I know. And shadows are pretty much like every traditional, like zombie or like Prometheus. What is it? What is it in Halo? Prometheus? What is it called? That game mode? Predator? It's Predator character, where you can.
It's called Infection.
Infection. It has a bunch of different names. I was right. It doesn't matter. Anyway, where you can run quickly, so you have the ability to run like it feels like at least
almost double the speed of your
twice
normal.
or 3 times the speed of the normal. You have unlimited climb except for bumps, which we learned very quickly that if there's a slight elevation change in what you're climbing, you fall off immediately. And you have pretty much a normal health bar is taken down in 1 hit. Obviously,
you have like a third of your normal health bar.
You have a third of your health bar, but your melee attack takes away
full
the
shield.
Entire health bar of a normal human or the full shield of a normal.
Also, you can't pick up weapons.
You can't pick up weapons.
Or anything, for that matter.
Yeah, you can't pick up. You can kick down doors like a badass, though.
It's really satisfying.
You just explode doors. And the whole point is that as soon as 10 legends are left and the rest are shadows, then it goes into it switches modes, and a dropship comes, and the 10 have to get to the dropship on the same team, where the shadows pick them off, and the shadows keep respawning. And as you kill legends, they become shadows, so as the game progresses, more and more shadows are created, and they respawn never-endingly? I don't know how to say that.
Continuously?
Continuously. They respawn continuously until either what normally happens, legends make it onto the dropship, honestly, or you kill them all and then you win.
And a lot of other games have attempted at an infection game and have been pretty similar. And I think EA and why am I blinking on Respawn did a really cool job of innovating like what makes Apex a game at its core and combining that with an infection style.
100%.
Yeah, because you're it's like solo, so you drop with 30 people. Again, the number is reduced because of the type of game mode. But as you die, instead of having to quit out your game and start over again, you can keep playing. So that's what's really cool about this, is you can continuously play.
The worst part about Apex fixed with
right. And then you become the shadow, and then you're able to traverse the map in a different style than you were before, more quickly, more agile. And it's cool because it's the old map, and it's set nighttime too. Which makes it really cool because it's kind
of there's like spoopy candles, and it's definitely for Halloween.
Right. I think it's clearly a limited time, but they did a really good job. Of
it's really fun.
Yeah. And the whole idea of like, I really like how the game mode essentially changes. So it's this free for all, and then it's like a free for all, but it's like a PvE, like free for all, but you're still fighting other champions, and then it becomes this like team game. Like now you're with these 10 people and you're on a team and you're fighting against this group of horde, and you have to get to this extraction location before they can kill you.
Also, it's probably one of the most brilliant overall game designs as far as user skill goes. Mm-hmm. Like, the problem with Apex is that the people who are good are always good, and they continue to kill the people who are weak until they win, and then they keep winning, and no one ever wins. The beauty of this is it's like, you have 32 people at different skill levels. The people who are bad get killed, but then they become stronger than the people who were good a minute ago. So you get to become a crazy zombie that runs twice the speed and you can barely see because it's nighttime. And then the people who are left are the 10 best people.
I've gotten top 10 a lot, and I wouldn't say I'm the best people.
In theory, the people who are left are the 10 best people who could survive the longest.
Correct.
And then those people then have to work together against a horde of people who are worse at the game than them, but have more like ability than them.
Right.
So like really, as far as game design goes, it's brilliant because you balance everything as the game progresses. So those who are good get balanced out, those who are bad get powered up, and then you fight. And it's really fun. It's well done.
Yeah, I love it. The only thing I've noticed is towards the end, kind of when the dropship countdown starts, and then when the dropship actually gets there, is when you die as a shadow and come back in. Pretty much by the time your toe hits the ground, you're getting shot and you die again. And you have to keep... It's an endless loop of flying back in and getting shot. Because you're a one-hit kill, essentially. Like, depending on the gun, I feel like most guns is probably one-hit kill. You're dead within a second. But
Yeah.
no, it's an awesome game mode. I love it. The whole aesthetic of
You should
Apex
also
is-
drop in twice as fast as a shadow, by the way. That would be my only note.
I think that would make it interesting, yeah, because it would be because if you're picking them off one by one, I mean the whole like really good thing is traveling in a pack of these horde, because then it's hard to kind of pick them all off at once. But if you're like killing them one by one and then it takes them longer to each get down, then you're just like picking off one as they hit the ground, and it makes it easier for the champions to win. Which for the most part, I think we only saw the Shadows win one time.
We won.
Yeah, we won. We won as the Shadows. So, but kudos. I mean, there's been a lot of hate towards EA and a lot of their games, but with EA and Respawn, they've been doing a lot of
Respawn keeps them in check.
I guess so. I don't know. Respawn is also developing the new Star Wars game, so we'll see how that goes at launch.
Let me through a dramatic telling. Let me tell you the story of EA and Respawn. All right, ready? We're in a boardroom, and on one side is
Always in a boardroom.
EA, and on the other side is Respawn. And EA jumps up and is like, "I have an idea!" And Respawn's like, "Oh god damn it! All right, what is it?" And they're like, "Loot boxes!" And then Respawn is like, "Do you not remember? Do you not remember?" And then EA sits down and is sad. And then 10 seconds later, EA jumps up and they're like, "I have an idea!" And then Respawn's like, "God damn it!" And they're like, "Loot boxes!" And Respawn is like, "You know what? You just let us run with this, okay? You just sit there and you can take the money and the credit, but just
And
don't
we'll
get
make
involved."
everything. I mean, honestly, that's what it seems like. It seems like that Respawn's just like, you know what? We'll give you the money. Just let us have all the decisions, and you can take all the money from it. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, they're like, EA's like, "But what about loot boxes?" And they're like, "EA, if you suggest loot boxes one more time."
It's like a man in a suit at the end with a treasure chest, and it glows every time he opens. It's like, ooh, wait, loot boxes.
Loot boxes. And then Respawn throws a ball of yarn into the room and closes the door, and EA is pacified for hours.
But yeah, I mean, with all the other, like I said, EA has gotten so much hate from a lot of its games, but
Because they
Apex has not only had like it was really amazing at launch, like it continuously has good quality updates throughout the life of the game so far. So it's like, that's
If
amazing.
you would have told me that the people who made Titanfall were going to make a very successful, like,
I guess a first-person shooter as like Kyle.
yes, first-person shooter. No, a very successful, like, what is it called? Battle Royale type game. I would have been like,
I mean,
they didn't even make a successful first-person shooter game with mech suits. So I don't understand how you think they're gonna. And then they came out with this. I was like, oh shit. All right.
And what a lot of people forget is Apex takes place in the Titanfall universe. Like
Yeah.
a lot of those guns, like the R99, R301, those are Titanfall.
And
guns.
by a lot of people forget, he means a lot of people don't know or care. So
Right. Which, I mean, have you played Titanfall 2?
yes, I played it with you.
I never owned Titanfall 2.
I played
the first one.
Titanfall Uno.
Yeah, they did a lot of change. We'll have to play because I just bought Titanfall 2, so I'll just show you. Like,
Okay.
it's really fun.
Maybe it feels like Apex. Who knows?
Maybe it does.
Anyway.
You know what else got a big update? Fortnite got a big update. But
Oof,
I guess
Fortnite's got a huge update.
Well, yeah. Oh my god.
Actually,
you know what? I want to talk about this. We're gonna talk about it because there's been a lot of craziness with Fortnite. So Fortnite got a massive update, and the update is less impressive than what they did with the update. So what happens is
if you just replace the word update with dick, it would still work.
Fortnite has a huge dick.
It's not that it's not what the dick looked like, but it's how they used the dick. I was just like, Jesus Christ.
But it was.
Anyway,
it
more
was,
about Fortnite's huge update.
It was the implementation. So the biggest thing was update. Fortnite got a Chapter 2 update. New map, very similar to Apex. New map, kind of overhauled graphics and experience, a lot more guns. They added fishing, they added boats, you can now swim. But what they did was they said there was going to be an event happening. I don't remember what the date is, but what Fortnite's really good at is they do a lot of these in-game events. So a lot of people just like wait in-game for something to happen, and then it happens in real time so everyone gets to experience it at once. But what happened was these rockets started being launched out of the map into the sky, and then they would turn and they would aim back towards the ground, and they just started like Armageddoning the map. Like the map was just getting destroyed until there was nothing left. And then at that point, you lost control of your character, and your character slipped slowly back into space until it was just this like galaxy that you were spinning around. And then your character disappears, like disintegrates, and there's just a black hole. And then they did that, and then they had this black hole, and they streamed this black hole for hours, and people watched this black hole with nothing. Like there was no content, and then the black hole went away, and then a screen came up saying, we had a great time with Fortnite. We're glad we got all this out and everything, but we're done. And it was close and uninstall, and people couldn't play Fortnite for like 36 hours straight. And then like their Twitter was, they had nothing on Twitter. They just went radio silence, and people lost their shit. There was kids crying because Fortnite was gone. There's people parents demanding refunds.
Refunds?
Because kids spent tons of money in like cosmetics. Like parents were calling and being like, we want a refund.
Incredible.
And they're like, just kidding, guys. We got a new map and it's like Fortnite Chapter 2, and they like but for 36 hours, people couldn't play Fortnite.
That's amazing.
And the fact that a company could turn their game off essentially for 36 hours and then turn it back on and still be successful. It's just like, oh my Jesus Christ, Fortnite.
That makes me so happy though.
I love you. That was amazing.
They're like, we're done.
Yeah, like the screen. I'll have to show you the title screen after this, but it was just like you could close, or there's an option to uninstall the game, which would actually uninstall the game. Like you just couldn't play for like 35 hours straight. Great. And I was just like, wow. Kudos, Fortnite. You're right.
Fortnite does have a big old dick.
Because I was like, what?
That's a big.
But it was so funny because there was like Snapchat stories of just little kids like bawling and crying because they couldn't play Fortnite anymore.
Let me give you a. This is. I mean, obviously they can do stuff like that, but this is how big Fortnite is. I went to the thrift store today, and this has nothing to do with the actual story. I just was humble bragging about going to the thrift store. There was a car in the parking lot, and where normally Wash Me or a penis, a gentleman sausage would have been drawn, was just the hollowed words of Fortnite written in the dust on the back of a car, which means that some child was like, man, I could do anything. I could do anything to the back of this car, anything my mind could create, and all its mind could create was friggin' 8 letters, Fortnite.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway.
But no, when I like heard about all this happen, because I didn't watch the stream, I jumped into people's streams to see what was happening, but a lot of YouTubers sat, because there was a 24-hour stream, and then there was like an 18 to 20 hour just like no one can play Fortnite. I mean, just being like a black hole where you couldn't play, and then just like your only option was to either uninstall the game, and they were just like, we're done. Like, we had a good run, and thanks for all the support, and we're done. And then they were just like, ha, psych, guys, we're just kidding. Here's a new map.
And to end it out, that's why video games are art.
That's why.
Right there.
Yes.
Because if you can bring a child to tears by taking it away, you are art. Undeniably. All right, well.
Okay. I'm turning into a puddle of chocolate sitting in here, and our dinner's ready, so we gotta go.
It's been wonderful. Stay classy.
Peace out.
See you next week, hopefully.
Possibly. Bye.
Bye.